Welcome to Behind the Doors, the podcast where we take you behind the scenes of residential real estate investing. I'm your host, Dan Noma Jr., here with my co-host, Marvin Cruz.
We're here to help you unlock the best strategies and practice for investors. Whether you're just starting out or you're a seasoned pro looking to scale your portfolio.
We've spent decades navigating the ever-changing world of real estate, and now we're sharing everything we've learned to help you succeed.
From off-market deals to cash flow management and everything in between, we'll break it down and bring you actionable insights that can make a real difference in your investments.
So get ready to open the door to new opportunities and take your real estate investing to the next level. Let's dive in.
We are back. I love when we have guests, by the way.
I know.
It's one of my favorite moments because you know what? I get to learn, listen.
Yeah.
And that's what our podcast is about, is showing investors, here's some awesome opportunities for you. Agents, here's awesome opportunities for you.
Yep.
And we got a special guest from Sell2Rent, Mr. Alex Rodriguez.
Love it, man. Alex is back in the game.
How are you, bud?
I'm ready for this.
You ready?
Ready.
Born ready.
Well, Alex, last time we chatted about the model, and I think our group of listeners probably got some pretty good insights into what you guys do. But now I want to dive a little bit more into the weeds, and let's talk about a little bit about the inventory squeeze, and while the traditional tactics that we as distressed buyers of history aren't working anymore, right? The idea of just going to people and saying, "Hey, you got to sell your home," that doesn't work anymore. But why do you let's start with why do you think those traditional methods are falling short in this market?
I think there's something around the technology around there, and more people having options and solutions. My mom will never sell her house on her own. She'll always need somebody to walk her. It's her biggest asset. It's most people's biggest asset in the U.S., which I don't think is super smart, right? I think putting all your equity or your net worth into one asset that a hurricane could clear and a tornado could clear is not the brightest thing anymore. It was 30 years ago, right? But it's still the biggest asset, no matter what I say, right? So I just think the older generation will probably always need it, but I think the younger generation, if you're 45 and under, you're on your phone all the time. I think more people have more options. Before it was always for sale by owner only. Now there's all sorts of solutions. And with what's happening with the NAR, what's happening with the public and seeing everything that's happening in the news, I think there's just more and more solutions, and people are open to that, way more open to that today than they were.
Yeah. Yeah. I like to think, maybe I'm wrong, but when I first started offering cash offer, goes back to the days of the beginning of the institutions, right? I worked for the first single family REIT here, and we had to acquire, my first order of business from Blackstone was to buy 2,000 homes in Phoenix. And no one had ever done it before, And so when I started marketing to consumers and said, I had a buyer for your home, that was the first time that I really was doing, I'd seen that, and no one was really offering that previously. Now I feel there's a lot of people out there doing it, but it's you have all of these, they're trying to buy them for 50 cents on the dollar kind of stuff, right? I just, with more options like this, it just seems that the days of being able to buy stuff at these monster deep discounts, I just don't see that being an option anymore. It doesn't seem to be the place.
Which is a great segue. So can you break it down from the investor side? So how does it actually work on their side from their view?
Yeah. So if an investor registers on our platform, they usually get first dibs. They get what we call the early look. They register the buy box. They say more or less what price points, what regions, what areas. Do they use debt or not? Just the overall, what does the portfolio look like? We always push them to try to open it up a little more, because you never know if you just pick Orlando, not Central Florida, if you're only going to see deals in that area. Once the deal is launched on the platform, though, we have all sorts of communication based on what they buy. We feed them the deals that match their buy box, to be honest, right? We also, if we don't have enough investor flow, then we do all sorts of cold outreach. It's a huge list of items, but it includes text, calls, mailers, emails, AI calls, AI texts, all sorts of things, because the hard problem that we're solving is we're launching deals across the US, and we don't have investors yet across the US. So the hard problem to solve, it used to be figure out who the best investors were. Not anymore. 15 years ago when I started, I remember going to the property appraiser's website and clicking a folio number and seeing if they pay their taxes or not. Was there an LC behind it? Okay, who owns the folio next to it? Are they local or is there a PO box? Now you can do that with 15 different platforms just based on the address. You can see the entire portfolio. When's the last time the investor bought? Who's the lender? Like, it's easy now. The hard part today is contacting that investor. So the investor, we try to make it as easy for them as possible. We do target marketing. We try to make the contact points super clear and easy and improve. We've been improving that journey a lot. But from the investor, we're trying to make it as simple as possible. We do the transaction coordinator in-house, in-house. We try to set up the loans for you. We try to pre-qualify every property that goes on with a loan. So by the time it gets to the investors, it's a white label, pretty much. And we want to make that experience as easy as possible.
I appreciate it. So obviously the investor can avoid vacancy, they can avoid turnover costs, they can start to really lock in cash flow. So how does this compare from a return perspective, say the BRRRR model or the flip model?
It's more hands-off, way more hands-off, right? A lot of the investors who acquire properties through us are a little more passive. Look, real estate is never going to be passive. I'll fight anybody who says real estate is passive unless they're buying an Amazon triple net lease that has 15 years on it. You're gonna have to pick up the phone when something breaks. You're gonna have to hire or have a management company that you're willing to pay for that. If you're doing the BRRRR model or a fix and flip, you're gonna be hands-on. Look, I have 2 left hands. I am terrible at fixing anything. My wife will just punch me in the back of the head. It just doesn't work. Like, I'm bad at it, but I'm a better investor, and I'm willing to put that into my entire acquisition cost to know that if I'm gonna have to do rehab or leasing. For us, most of the rehabs don't have to be done day one. The property's occupied, you have long-term tenants, and if you got to drop 40K into it, you're not going to get more rent by changing the refrigerator today or by painting the exterior. Like, it doesn't really matter that much in our product. So it's a little bit more passive, and you could hold on to your cash a little better than if you have to go flip it tomorrow, right? And most of these people are buying properties in states that they're not in. So it's not like they're going to get in there with their crew and, really get into it for 3 months of flipping this.
No, thank you.
Have you guys done any research, Alex, on like the percentage of homeowners that you think would sell if they didn't have to move? Like, have you done any like consumer surveying around any of this? Because I just, to me, it seems like there's like
15%. We did a couple thousand person survey and it was like 15%. They just didn't know about it, which is, it's a fight we're going to be fighting for a long time. It's just not in our vernacular. Like, I didn't know about it, so I don't expect a lot of people to know about it. But when we introduce it, the first thing is like, why would I do that? And then they're like, wait, if I could kind of have a lease, cash out, not move, predetermined term, now I might be open to it. What is the price point? How much? At the end of the day, is how much equity am I taking out? Does it solve my problem for the homeowner's perspective?
Yeah. Yeah, I've always told like agents, investors that I work with that like, when I learned real estate, I learned it from an agent who told me that, we had to sell the house for the most money in the shortest period of time. And that was exactly what every homeowner wanted, was the shortest period of time and the most money. And then I remember like when Open Door walked into my market, and that was like the first test market, right, for Open Door. And when they walked in the market, started offering people, a discount plus like their 15% service fee. And I started presenting they were just like, please present these offers and see what happens. So I'd go out, like I was actually presenting them because I didn't believe anybody would do this. And people were just like, okay. That's when like my whole kind of mindset shifted. And I started to think about like people's perspective on their equity, like their relationship to their equity is just different than what we thought it was. Like, we all thought that people were just like attached to their equity the way that we are, but they're not, right? They're willing to give up some of that equity for some sort of convenience, and like you've heard me talk to our team about this. Like, I use the analogy of like, I don't like to pay $25 for a cheeseburger, like I really don't. But there are times where I'll get on Uber Eats and I'm running around with the kids and I'll order a cheeseburger and it costs me $25. And, I just paid for that convenience. And I think it's all kind of very similar to what we're talking about here, is that, people are willing to pay for that kind of stuff, and I think that works really well.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah, that is. Oh, hey, Alex, let's talk about your ideal investor avatar, if you will. Who's killing it with Sell2Rent? Is this institutional, mom and pop, a little bit of both?
We look at it as a pyramid. On the top of the pyramid, there's not that many of them, but it's the institutional investors. And they have a lot of the similar buy boxes, right? A lot of times they need the property to be vacant, even though now they're more open because inventory levels to acquire leasebacks. In the middle market, we have our middle market investors, which is somebody who started as an entrepreneur and bought the first home as they had a real job. And then they have 50 plus doors at this point, and they're making it into a business. Our biggest market is the mom and pop investor, the bottom of the pyramid, which is local, who already owns there, who's getting into real estate, who hasn't built a giant portfolio, has to worry about cycling the cash yet. And those are the people who we've seen the most success. I say 95% of the buyers that have bought through us are more local mom and pop investors who know the area, who might want to do their own management, who don't want heavy rehabs, right? Who want to start growing their portfolio and see this as a way to acquire assets that are not competing against the masses yet.
Yeah.
So if I was an investor and if I like this idea, because I think the attraction here, right, is not just like, one, it's off market. Right. Two is you're getting, these prepaid rents, and then you've got a guaranteed tenant in place, right? Yep. But if I'm an investor and I'm looking to scale this model, like what do you tell those investors that are thinking about this? Like, what do you think they need as far as a team? And then what do they need to think about to scale if they were going to do this?
So we have a discussion of if we were buying for ourselves, right? Would I hyper concentrate it in a city, or would I say, let's diversify and go to secondary, tertiary markets and get 13 gross cap rates, 14, honestly, right? Of like, what type of portfolio would we build? I'm not interested in building a portfolio anytime soon. I'm still getting over 9,000 doors, right? And recovering from that. But as an owner, would I want 5-year leases, 3 years prepaid rent? I'm getting 15, 20% discounts. I'm scattering that around the US, right? Because honestly, the property management is a lot softer with this. It's not as intense. The tenant has already lived there. You do an inspection up front, so you're still getting eyes on it, but it's not heavy lift. Like, there's no holes in the roof. There's no green pools. So the conversation is more around portfolio composition and what you want to do. Or are you the type of investor who needs to touch a feel and it has to be in their backyard, right? I think with technology today and the amount of things we can do from our computers, I think building a portfolio that's scattered is a lot easier today. Plus, there's a lot more, let's call it institutional level property managers that are looking to grow. It's such a low margin business that they're always looking to grow, right? And if you have a small portfolio, maybe instead of going to one of those, you go to the local, best in class lady that runs 50 houses. So I think it depends more on what you're looking to build and how you're looking to build it and how much risk you're willing to take. I've seen so many deals come through our platform in smaller markets that have so little competition that I think is super smart to take down and diversify. And Dan, the one thing that you missed that's sexy to this for an investor is you're walking into equity. Right. So if you were buying, look, 20 years ago, an old Jewish guy taught me, when I was buying real estate for the first time, he's like, you make all your money on the acquisition. Yeah. And it didn't click. Then I went to the first craziness for the last 13 years, and the rising tide raised all ships. And we made so many mistakes that got covered because prices went up. If I would have started buying 3 years ago, I would have gotten decapitated. Right. So with this, you're getting a buffer in place from the get-go, which saves a lot of pain, especially if you miss something, or if there's an error, or if there's a basement issue or a structural issue. Like, you could breathe a little easier.
Yeah, that's definitely. All right, well, let's close with this one. So what about like any problems? Like, has there been any crazy stories of like, somebody staying in the house and some crazy stuff happen? I mean, I'm sure there's got to be something.
More crazy stories before the transaction closes. Not so much after. After it's already been vetted, but before the transaction closes, in a couple of years, we have a giant list of crazy things that have happened in the transactions, all the way from third mortgages, solar panels that weren't discussed, ex-wife who wasn't told that the property was selling, or HUD loans that were personal but were against the house, or HOA craziness that no one thinks of. Like, we've had all of that, and all we've done is hit our head against the wall, figure out how to improve it, make it better, and make it better, and make it better. So now, look, I'll give you some life lessons. So we were getting our behinds kicked, honestly, just trusting the seller with everything they were telling us, right? So we pushed putting everything on the contract earlier, and then we pushed for a title pre-check before we even launched on the platform. Let's know exactly who owns it, not just trusting them. See exactly when lease violations are there. We talk to the HOAs, before putting it on the platform. Like, before, we trust you. But we got so many rental restrictions and life lessons that we're like, yeah, we need to get better. We use something, this is like a secret part of our things. We do something called NOC, and it's a legal document that we put a lien against the house to cover our fee. If we perform, right, and we do what we do, and we promise, we'll remove it, no problem. Well, we got into a point where we launched properties in the platform, and then the sellers wanted to disappear for one complete reason or the other, or they market it with somebody else. And the reality is that that's not fair to us. Like, we spend a lot of time, energy, and money working on a transaction. And if we do what we promise we're going to do, we expect to be compensated. So that was another life lesson that has been awesome, but we had to learn it.
Live and learn, man. You got to live and learn. Thanks for tuning in to another episode of Behind the Doors. We hope you found today's insights valuable for your real estate investing journey.
Remember, real estate success doesn't happen overnight, but with the right tools and strategies, you can build long-term wealth and create passive income.
If you enjoyed the show, be sure to subscribe, leave us a review, and share it with others who are passionate about real estate investing.
Don't forget to follow us on social media for more tips and exclusive content.
Until next time, keep unlocking new opportunities, and we'll see you on the next episode of Behind the Doors.